This is Julian Marshall with NewsHour live from the BBC in London. Portugal was ruled by a right-wing dictatorship up until 1974, and the man who was instrumental in its overthrow has himself died at the age of 84. Otelo Saraiva de Carvalho was the chief strategist of what was known as the Carnation Revolution, a coup by junior left-leaning officers. It was a bloodless coup and got its name from civilians placing carnations in the barrels of the guns of soldiers to celebrate the end of dictatorship. Not only did it mark the transition to democracy in Portugal, but also the end of Portugal's colonial wars, which would lead to independence for territories such as Angola and Mozambique. Raquel Varela is a professor of political history at the New University of Lisbon and the author of A People's History of the Portuguese Revolution. She told me more about the man she came to know.
I knew him personally. If you would listen to him 1 year ago, his voice was like 18 years old voice, full of hope. He was the military leader. He designed the plan that overthrown the longest dictatorship of Europe. It was 48 years of dictatorship in less than 48 hours. The main reason of this coup d'etat is, of course, the colonial war. Portugal had a colonial war until the anti-colonial revolutions of Angola, Mozambique and Guinea. Portugal had 13 years of colonial war that had mobilized over 1 million young men. The movement that Otelo was leader decided to put an end to this war.
That group of military officers, they fell out, didn't they?
They divided themselves between what we called more right-wing officers and the group near Otelo, which was called the officers that were in favor of a popular democracy. The left radicalization was something that just happened very near the 25th of April. It's not very easy to compare him with other leaders, but I would say there was, of course, an influence of the Cuban Revolution, the anti-colonial movements in the colonies, but also of these so-called, at the time, third world progressive movements, non-alignment movements, so very attached to the idea that anti-capitalist but not pro-Soviet Union or not totally engaged with Soviet Union approach.
And Otelo, he stood on that kind of platform as a candidate for the presidency in 1976, but unsuccessfully.
This was a surprise competition for the presidency because these were the first elections after the overthrow of the dictatorship, and the Communist Party had a candidate. And at the time, the idea was that the Communist Party would have an hegemony in the elections towards the left of the socialists and to the extreme left. And Otelo entered as a candidate and had surprisingly almost 18% of the votes, 1/8, and the Communist Party less than 8%.
So after that unsuccessful bid for the presidency, did Otelo retire from public life?
He was always a very important figure, very much engaged in public politics, although never organized in a party. In the beginning of the 80s, he was connected with the armed struggle group FP25, and he was led to judgment, but in the judgment he was considered innocent of any kind of blood crimes.
That was Raquel Varela, a professor of political history at the New University of Lisbon, reflecting on the life and death of Otelo Saraiva de Carvalho, who's died at the age of 84.